Hey guys, what's up, and welcome back to another episode of Purple Projections podcast. I believe this is our 10th episode, and we are so glad to have you all on board for the 10th episode. And we do want to apologize for not posting last week. We had some minor difficulties that we had to deal with, but we're back. And as always, we are joined by Purple Political Talk. Hello, Purple.
Hello, UEP. How are you doing today? And we're glad to have you back. I mean, again, like he said, for some unfortunate technical difficulties, I guess we couldn't film last time, but we're back and stronger than ever. So, what are we talking about today, UEP?
So this is actually something that our past podcast episodes have been areas that we are 100% ready to discuss, but this one is more of a hypothetical, and so we're going to be discussing how the election's going to go down, not necessarily who we think is going to win, but if Biden wins, how's he going to win? If Trump wins, how's he going to win? And what is due to the mail-in voting happening a lot more than it would usually happen in a normal election year. It'll take longer to count the votes, and will people declare victory before all the votes are counted? So we're going to explore all the possibilities. Hopefully, we're going to condense it because this could end up being super long, but we'll do our best to condense it. Stick to only one or two talking points per slide. But yeah, so I'm going to get started, and so now we're going to explain essentially, I forgot I had the facts, but now we're going to explain what is this about. So I'll let Purple take it away.
So essentially, since we're looking at an election with very high numbers of mail-in ballots, I'm just going to say the least, it's going to be interesting, the process to tabulate those votes and the possible civil breakup that may be after the fact. So, if you guys are familiar with mail-in ballots, you guys should know that they take a lot longer to tabulate. One, because they could be delayed or something like that, or two, that it's just that some states don't allow to tabulate until election day. So those mail-in votes really going to be a very big part of the election. 50% of the country is expected to vote mail-in, but the other half is expected to vote through in person. So at the end of the day, we're going to talk about this later, but it's going to be a big divide, and honestly, mail-in ballots will definitely delay as far as we know, to know who wins the election, because again, mail-in ballots, all these different things, which, I mean, you could say it affects one party over the other in certain areas, and we're probably not going to get into that, too much in this video. However, we will talk about how the race will look like and how we will be waiting like. And I think that's something very interesting to think about, not what the effect is on the general election as a whole, but more of how the election timeline might actually look.
Yeah, 100%. So I think we also need to talk about past mail-in voting, and I want to clear something up. There are some of you who may think that mail-in voting is subjective to fraud, or it's easier to rig an election if you have a large amount of mail-in votes. That's actually not true. In fact, there have only been 31 cases of voter fraud in the past 20 years in the United States, and most of them have actually been voting in person, so don't be worried about voter fraud for those of you who are. It's unlikely to happen this year. And I also want to say that in 2016, 33% of people voted by mail, so we're seeing an increase, obviously, but it's still not an unseen increase. And there have been elections, in fact, where we've had even bigger amounts of people vote by mail, whether it be in the early 1800s, which people did actually, some of them voted by mail, or just signed a ballot and dropped it in, but it's been different in the past, but this is certainly a strange election. So I'll get started on what it's going to look like on election night, and I would obviously want to pull up this one model that shows that Trump could be winning big on election night, winning in states like New Mexico, Nevada, winning all the swing states, plus some solidly blue states like Vermont. He could be leading in Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Jersey, maybe even Maryland, Delaware, he has a chance at, and he could even be leading in Virginia, and he is expected to be leading in all the swing states. In fact, Illinois is kind of flip-floppy. Biden could be leading in Illinois. Trump could be leading in Illinois. But we all know that Illinois is going to go to Biden. So, election night, around 15 to 20% of the vote is going to be in a best-case scenario, 30% or a fourth of the vote. But don't expect the race to be called on election night. And credible news sources should be saying that a lot of states are too close to call because it's impossible to call a swing state with only 15% of the vote in.
Yeah, I mean, looking at how the election is going at this point and the number of swing states we truly have, because think about it like this: if states like Kansas are being considered like may close like almost like in the like actual contested margins, imagine on election day where like in most places you're only gonna have like 10% of the vote to work with. In certain states, especially the Republican states, you would most likely be able to call the race earlier on because you like have a lot more people voting in person. That's a huge debate that we're not going to get into this video. I mean, and I think honestly that it's going to be a partisan divide. It's been showing that most Democrats and some independents will vote by mail. Some Republicans and some independents will vote in person. So, of course, on election night, when most of the votes from election day are actually counted, like in past years, we've seen countless of like calls. I mean, like realistically, there's never been like a call like on election night for the presidency. Like I think like 2012, but like most of the time it happens like like very early the next morning. So honestly, this time it wouldn't be the next morning that we'd be waiting for results. We're gonna wait days. I want to make the comparison here. Do any of you remember the Iowa caucuses in 2020?
Oh boy.
Where everyone was like excited for the Iowa caucus, like the moment where they're always going through the map on CNN and they're go like, there's votes going in here, there, and it's gonna be exactly the same. It's gonna be you're waiting for these polls. We have for these numbers. We have the exit polls. We have everything. It's just time to wait and actually wait for the numbers to get. And essentially, what would end up happening is that the race is going to be called later on, which we're going to talk about in this video.
Thanks, and we're going to move on after this, but I want to make the comparison to other previous elections. Now, in 2016, as we all know, the race was called for Donald Trump at about 2-3 a.m., depending on what news source you're looking at on the East Coast, so Pacific Coast, around midnight. But in 2012, Obama won the election at about 11 o'clock on the East Coast, which is 8 o'clock on the West Coast, so just subtract 3 hours. I'm not going to go through that. 2008, it was called early for Obama. He won in a landslide. But in 2004, actually, and I wasn't watching 2004, obviously, but I've actually rewatched the whole election on YouTube. I was bored. Please don't judge me. But the election was actually called for Bush at around 6 or 7 in the morning on the East Coast, and then Cory conceded at 8 in the morning, and that was because one state, Ohio, was taking forever to count the votes, and it looked like Cory had a chance of catching up, but he ended up not catching up, and as we all know, in 2000, it went in the Supreme Court, and we didn't know the winner until a couple weeks before Inauguration Day. But before that, elections had been historically just called, at 11 or 12 on the East Coast, and then back in 1916, where Woodrow Wilson was running for re-election, it wasn't called till about a day after, where California took forever to count their votes, and that gave Wilson the victory. So this has happened before, but this is by far going to take the longest of any modern election. Of course, in the early 1800s, elections took 2 weeks to count because obviously they didn't have advanced technology like we do. But this is going to take forever to count, so don't be anticipating a winner. And if you see an entirely red map on election night, don't be surprised. Although, by the way, I do want to say there are some states that vote only by mail, have been doing that for the past 40 years. Like, for example, Oregon. Trump. There are some people who are going to think, well, Trump he only lost Oregon by 10 in 2016, so maybe he can make it. Maybe he can have a lead on election day due to his supporters coming out to vote for him in person. Oregon votes entirely by mail. So, do you want to move on, Purple, or do you have something? One last thing to say.
About voting by mail, like I think honestly, sometimes it's misconstrued a little bit in part like of how an all-mail-in system will look like. In most states, the way it works is that they send your ballot through the mail, and then you just have to take it to the polls if you want to like vote in person, and you exchange the vote. In other states, they want to do universal mail-in ballots, which again, we're not getting into this debate here. And then in other states, they just want to have the regular absentee ballot system. So honestly, just looking at historical aspect, like UEP has been saying, I mean, it's happened before, and it's not new news. I mean, at the end of the day, this election will probably take years to count, like, compared to, like, modern elections where we have the latest technology that allows us to count ballots very efficiently. We still might be looking at a very long wait to find out who's going to win. So, let's move on from election night and go on to the next slide and talk about nights 2 and 3 UEP.
All right, so I'll start on this one, and then I'll let Purple start on the next one. But we're gonna certainly, whether you think Biden's gonna win the election or not, Trump's gonna be winning big on election day. So we're 100% going to see Biden catching up in some states. He's gonna be, by night 3, he'll probably be ahead in New Mexico. He'll probably be making it very close in Michigan, whereas back on election night, Trump's gonna be leading in Michigan by maybe 10 to 15 points. And then he'll probably be taking the lead back in Vermont, Connecticut, and then all of New England's going to be blue, with the possible exception of New Hampshire. And New Hampshire actually has done a good job of counting their votes by mail in the past. So we could see a call for, if Biden wins New Hampshire, possibly, we could see a call for Biden winning New Hampshire on night 2. But if Trump wins, it's going to be very close because this is a lean Democrat state. But I also want to say that the state of Florida, which is Purple's home state, has done a good job in the past of counting mail-in votes. In fact, in 2016, they counted nearly 80% of their mail-in votes on election night. So that was what made CNN, for example, able to call Florida for Donald Trump at about, I want to say, 9 p.m. on the West Coast. So Florida, we could see a call in Florida by night 2. Whether it be for Biden or Trump, obviously that's a whole other debate. But some states are going to be called, but some states like, the state of North Carolina, state of Pennsylvania, state of Arizona will take a bit longer to count their votes.
To say the least, I think, honestly, nights 2 and 3 are going to be kind of the turning point. Where is this election headed? Is it going to be a huge Biden landslide where maybe he's leading in some of the more contested states and game over for Trump? On the other hand, it could be that Donald Trump performs a lot better than he's expected in with precincts reporting, whatever. But I mean, really, there's no precincts reporting. It's kind of it's going to be a little bit harder, I guess, to tell how many votes came in and stuff like that. So honestly, by night 2 and 3, we're going to be able to tell where is it headed. Is it going to be a very long 2 to 3 weeks, or is it going to be over in a couple days? So honestly, we're going to see, like you said, nights 2 and 3, crucial for states like Florida. They usually count votes very quickly. And in the past, we've seen how Florida, coming into election day, they closed the polls. They already had 50% of the vote in, or maybe not that much, but 30 minutes later, they had 50% of votes in. Considering it's a huge state, it's because they have a very good mail-in system and a very good early voting system. So all of that really does, give a little bit of details of why some states might call some races faster and things like that, because they just have a lot faster processing for the information. So honestly, nights 2 and 3, we probably won't reach the moment of chaos, which could happen during this election and when we're getting results. However, it could happen and start to evolve into some protests and things like that nights 2 and 3.
I think night 3 is going to be the turning point because we're going to see. I think that Trump has a chance at winning Michigan. I'd say it's a small one, and I'm using this as an example. But I think both me and Purple have come to the consensus that Biden is the clear favorite in the state of Michigan. And I think we're going to see Biden, take the lead in Michigan, and then Trump's going to probably start saying, oh, it's a fake result, because Trump does believe that mail-in ballots are illegitimate.
You're kind of making stereotypicals about the candidates.
Well, I'm just saying that Trump has a history.
I get what you're saying, but right now we're talking more about what the national timeline might look like. And honestly, I don't see the election results being disputed at first. Now, if things start to look very out of order, in certain instances, there's many ways to measure that, then I think, honestly, chaos is going to ensue. But I get what you're saying, but
it's not 100%, but I'm just giving a hypothetical where Trump has there is the possibility that Trump will not accept the results of some states, but again, that's another debate. So we're gonna move on to week 1, where this could be over by then, but let's assume that the election is really close and it's not over. So which states are still gonna be too close to call purple?
So we would say the states I would say states like Wisconsin, North Carolina, which, especially North Carolina and Wisconsin, they take really long to count votes. Ohio's pretty slow at counting votes.
Oh, Ohio's horrible at counting votes.
Ohio, yeah. So you have to think about swing states. They're slow at counting votes, or just going to be insanely close. Those are the states that come to mind. And honestly, from day 3 to like the beginning of the end of week 1, I guess, because that's also part of week 1, is when chaos is going to start to ensue. If there is no call on who won the election, if you guys thought that some of the riots going on and the confrontations between the two sides is horrible right now, wait until the election. I think, honestly, a whole civil war, I mean, this is an exaggeration, but it's definitely a possibility with people disputing results. This is true, this is not. All of that crazy mess. Honestly, chaos could ensue. Looking at how 2000 happened, which 2000 is going to be child's play compared to this election if mail-in voting kind of becomes and does all of these things that we're talking hypothetically, that honestly, 2000 is going to be child's play. And in 2000, we had a lot of protests. Country went into chaos. Now, 2020, I wouldn't count it out of the picture, and I would say it gets worse because right now we're in a moment in our country's history, I guess, that everything's just so divisive. However you look at it, I would say that even if the U.S., for example, something horrible happens to the nation, I think if our government, our leaders on both the right, the left, Democrats, Republicans, independents, if they're not able to get together for something like the coronavirus, and all of that sparked a bunch of other controversies, I cannot imagine how the election will look like, because that is when we're going to start seeing very big chaos in our country.
And let me just add, I think both sides are saying that it's the end of the world if the other side wins. Certainly, I have my opinions. Purple has his. I want someone to win this election. I'm sure Purple wants someone else. But if your candidate does not win, please don't go and start a civil war. That's not what we need. And in 2000, you called it child's play. I mean, at least in 2000, we had a divisive campaign because it was close, but at least the two candidates and their supporters had respect for the other. I mean, Gore and Bush were two honorable men who both their supporters weren't completely toxic to one another, whereas in 2020 we're a lot more partisan and divided. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. And I also want to mention another state that Purple didn't mention that takes forever to count their votes. The state of Arizona. Arizona, if you remember in 2018, that Senate race between Senator Kirsten Sinema and Martha Sorry?
It took like 3 days to count. It was like
Sinema and McSally. We didn't know who won that race until the mail-in ballots started coming in, and we saw Sinema taking the lead. And some people were in the far right corners of the Republican Party were saying that the election had been stolen from McSally, even though that's hasn't been proven to be true. Again, that's a debate for another time. But McSally had the lead for the whole election night. She was leading. It was looking like she was going to win, and then the mail-in and absentee votes came in. Even some provisional ballots were counted, and it ended up going to Senator Kirsten Sinema, and she ended up winning that race by not. She won that race. It's not like she won that race by 2 votes. She ended up winning by tens of thousands of votes. She won by a pretty decent margin, actually. She won by 2.5 points. So Arizona is another state that isn't great at counting ballots. Georgia also.
Georgia takes long.
Yeah, Georgia takes a while to count. In fact, Georgia is smaller than Florida, and Georgia is actually like 3/5 the size of Florida, but they take longer than Florida to count their ballots. So Florida is a more efficient swing state. Pennsylvania, the whole Rust Belt isn't great at counting ballots, if I'm going to be honest with you. And then one of the states that I forgot to mention that does not like to count votes very quickly is the state of North Carolina. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but they're not great at counting votes. In fact, we ended up on election night 2016, we ended up having 100% of the vote in from states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania before the state of North Carolina. So that wasn't good. But all right, do you want to move on, or?
I want to say just fit in one last point here, and it's honestly that if the country cannot unite, I mean, if it don't matter who you support or whether you agree with those person's ideas, the country just needs to rally with one person. And at the end of the day, whether it's the person that you supported for the election or the other candidate, just take the results for what they are. It's democracy, and that's how democracy works. And I mean, of course, it's going to sting a little. Like, I guess, like a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters, felt in 2016. And of course, it's definitely going to sting. However, if your candidate that you're supporting loses, however, we're reaching a point in our nation that any little thing could cause extreme chaos in our country at a civil level where civility is almost non-existent amongst Americans, because we're essentially getting influenced by radical groups on both the left and the right, which truly is not good for the health of our civility as a country. So, again, like we said, take the results for what they are. If your candidate that you wanted did not win, I guess, unfortunately, that's what happened. Just move on as a nation and look to the future.
All right, yeah, definitely. I mean, no one wants a civil war to start because that would be a complete disaster. But weeks 2 and 3, now, I think worst case scenario we see whoever wins the election, whether it be Joe Biden or Donald Trump, whoever wins, it'll be by week 2.5. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, probably day 3 or 4. But assuming, let's just go with hypothetical. Let's say Joe Biden wins this election by week 2, and we have Biden wins the election. He wins in a lot of swing states. He ends up winning. Let's assume that Trump. There is a chance that Trump will just concede, but let's just because he has actually hinted that he might not concede. He says we'll have to see, which doesn't mean that he's not going to concede. Don't get me wrong, but there's a chance that he's not going to accept the results of the election. And Biden has said he's going to concede, so that's why we're using Trump here, not Biden. But Trump. Let's assume that Trump doesn't want to concede. What could happen? Well, I'm actually going to go. Let me just. Oh, okay, my bad. I thought I had a slide for a possible Supreme Court battle, but let's assume Trump doesn't want to concede. What could happen, Purple?
Well, essentially the things that are going to end up happening. One, we could see the Trump campaign and administration get fired up and ensue chaos. I mean, because then, one, on the right, you're going to have the Trump supporters that are going to get mad and whatever the election was rigged. On the left, are going to be the people that are going to be calling these people, we won fairly, whatever, all these different things. If that ends up being the case. And again, like you were saying, extremists are never good, however you point it out. And looking at our country as being filled with extremists on both the left and the right, if that ends up happening and ends up being the case, or crazy scenario, let's suppose Biden doesn't concede, because I mean, he doesn't openly say it, but since it's like an election that's being held, I guess, more it's an abnormal election to say the least.
Oh, no kidding.
Don't know. So honestly, both extremists on the sides could cause extreme chaos, and then more procedural wise, I mean, not reaction wise, we're gonna start seeing some court battles. And look, in 2016, where the results weren't super close or they weren't that contested like that, there was still a lot of court battles, and I mean, there's for all elections. And it's going to be worse in 2020. And again, the Supreme Court could end up coming into play if Donald Trump is not able to endure, for example, in this hypothetical, or Joe Biden in another hypothetical. So that's something to take into account. And honestly, week 1 is going to be the crucial week to tell how weeks 2 and 3 go. We could just have finishing counting votes in these 2 or 3 weeks, or we could end up with a scenario where mad chaos goes on, and we haven't even had a winner by the end of week 2, yet alone week 3. So that's something very interesting to take account in. And honestly, what is a scenario where we want to have when would we have a week 3 kind of electoral completion, where we have a winner? Going to be one of those close scenarios where probably Donald Trump wins, and then week 2 would probably be any Biden victory, and a best case Trump victory. But then looking at week 3, it would be kind of a slim Trump victory. So that's interesting to watch, and the timeline could really vary.
Okay, so I'm gonna say where Biden has the edge in this scenario and where Trump has the edge. First, start with Trump. Trump has the edge if it goes if it comes down to Trump wins indisputably in a quote unquote blue state, say he wins indisputably in Michigan or Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, and then he carries Ohio, he carries Florida, he carries Arizona, he carries Iowa, etc. All the swing states that he needs to carry that are currently leaning towards him. Ohio's a swing state, but Trump's favored there. that's where Trump, and if Trump just has to pick off one blue state, whether it be the blue wall, a Nevada, or New Hampshire, so one of those states,
Arizona.
And hold on to Arizona, which is going to be a tall order, but he can still do it. Now, Biden is favored. Well, first of all, the electoral map is favoring Biden as of right now. Biden is favored if it comes down to the blue wall. Those states, and North Carolina, I forgot to mention North Carolina also has a Democrat governor. And North Carolina actually has a Democrat governor for the first time in a while. But the blue wall, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, as well as the state of North Carolina and Nevada, if that matters, and New Hampshire. No, sorry, not New Hampshire. Forgive me. Nevada, North Carolina, and the blue wall, including Minnesota, all have Democrat governors. If it comes down to one of those states, in Biden's going to win. Whether they rig it or not, there won't be voter suppression that hurts the Democrats. There won't be, huge rejection of provisional ballots. There will just be, here's the deal, he's currently winning, and we're just going to call it for him. But if the scenario is reversed, where Trump is losing or Trump is winning in one of those blue wall states, and it's indisputable, he picks off one of those states, and then he holds on to the other states, he wins the election. So it really comes down to what happens. But I have a question for Purple. Just give me a rapid-fire answer. If it comes down to the Supreme Court somehow, who do you think wins the election? If it's a Supreme Court vote, who wins the election, Trump or Biden?
Well, I mean, it does depend, but rapid-fire, I mean, it also depends on the scenario, because if we're going in it depends, because going to the Supreme Court can mean one of many things. Can you, specify a little bit more?
Sure. Suppose it comes down to a Bush versus Gore scenario. Let's go with the state of Florida, where it's so close that we can't, that we don't know who's going to win. And I think we agree that if had there been a recount, Gore would have won. Multiple studies have found that that's indisputable. But I went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court essentially said, we're going to stop the recount, and Bush wins. So, because Bush had been ahead. So, if it comes down to that, who's the Supreme Court? Who's the Supreme Court advantage?
So let's suppose it's Florida. I would say that, first of all, since there's more of a conservative advantage in the Supreme Court, maybe that would have something to do with it. Again, that shouldn't be like that because it's the law of the land.
Exactly.
If Biden is leading, then narrowly leading, we might see it even swing to Trump, but I mean, it would probably go to Biden. And then if Trump is leaning, I think it's definitely going to go to Trump. What's going to be a little bit more disputable there is if Biden is leading, narrowly, 500 votes type of scenario in a state with a ton of votes. That's when we're going to start seeing the differences. That's when truly the Supreme Court justices might swing politically.
I actually think that they're not going to be too partisan, and we're going to wrap this up in a second. I don't think it's going to be too partisan. Of course, it could be partisan, which would be horrible for the country, but we've seen instances where the conservative Supreme Court that has a 5-4 advantage tilting conservative has actually voted against conservative ideals, whether it be back in, I think it was June or July, the LGBT, there was a thing that came up that the LGBTQ plus community, is it legal for healthcare providers to reject them because of their sexual orientation? The Supreme Court, including 2 conservative justices, said, no, that's not okay. We also saw multiple, I think it was 3 scenarios where gerrymandered state legislature maps and House maps even in North Carolina got overturned by the Supreme Court, even though they favored Republicans. So I think it's not, the Supreme Court could become very political, but as of right now, I hope and pray that it's not. So that's it. We're going to move on to the end results. So here I just laid out me and Purple's prediction, so we're not going to debate who's going to win the election. Purple has it narrowly going to Biden. I have it narrowly going to Biden, but the one state that we defer on is, as always, North Carolina. We cannot seem to agree on that state. But, so those are electoral maps. But this could vary depending on how the votes come in, like in Florida. If Biden's ahead by, say 15,000 votes, he's easily going to win there. But if he's ahead by only 200, we can bet it's a pure toss-up. But that's it, guys.
And last thing before we go, I just want to mention something about the election is that realistically, comparing it to past elections, this election is essentially the events that happen within the first 2 weeks of October are going to be crucial. which that might be a blessing in disguise, I guess, for Biden in a sense, because if we see the Democrats usually when they struggle, like in the last two elections, I guess the Democrats have struggled more towards the end. They've done very good through the summer, so looking at it like that, where they don't have to deal with the last 2 weeks because most people would have sent their ballots in already. I mean, that's a major advantage. I mean, Donald Trump, if he wants to win, he's going to have to shine within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, I agree with you. So that's a good observation. I forgot to point that out, but we're going to wrap it up right here, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. Hopefully you'll subscribe to me. Be sure to check out Purple Political check out his channel. Hopefully we can get him to 1K. I'm a little bit behind him. Hopefully we can get me to 1K before the election. That's our goal, our ultimate goal for both of our channels. So thanks a lot, guys, and I'll let Purple give us our wrap-up.
So, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is a very interesting topic. Tell us what you agree with or disagree with down in the comment section, and let's have a discussion, and a civilized one at that. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and remember to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications, and goodbye.
Thanks, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Okay, that was fun.